Well, there's not much to say really in regards to this slide. Just note the terminology that the interviewer of the focus group, i.e. you, is referred to as the moderator, sometimes the facilitator. 3 focus groups, usually the minimum for a study. 2 is fine, but don't be saying, I'm going to do 6 or 7 focus groups because it won't really seem practical. So if you're going to make the argument that you would use focus groups, I would say 2 or 3. Now, when you choose a focus group, and whether you actually choose a focus group or any other method, you have to, in your coursework, tell me who you select, at least their basic demographic characteristics, or what characteristics they need to have to be of use for your research. You also, and this is a side point, also have to tell me what sort of samples you could have used and what sample you did use, or you would use, sorry, to select your participants. As I mentioned in the previous slide, the people have to have the information that you need. They have to fit with your research question. Okay, so there's no point just picking random people to discuss a very specific issue which they may have no experience of. Another thing in focus groups which is slightly different from a one-to-one interview, depending on your topic, it may not be a good idea to have certain demographic groups together in the same focus group. Say males and females if you're going to be talking about something to do with gender, people from different ethnic backgrounds if you're talking about, say, race or immigration. It'll really depend on what your topic actually is. And it could be something even more subtle. Are school teachers in Northern Ireland, do they feel valued by their employers? And having a group of school teachers there and one of them is the headmaster, they may not want to be open. So you have to think about this in terms of common sense. Who should be in the room together? How would this work best? Who should maybe not be in the room with other people as well? So you would develop your sample or your research population, which we've covered, and then you would take your sample from that. Again, remember as well your demographic. So if you're going to talk about issues to do with gender, say you're female, you may have to think about, well, would I have an all-male focus group? Are they going to be open and honest with me about issues to do with gender, seeing as I'm female and they're all male? Just think it through when you're planning your research. What could possibly come up which is going to be a bit of a spanner in the works here? This is very straightforward, but it is something you need to include with your research proposal. Are you going to give any incentives for people to come take part in your focus group? Because it's quite common that people would be offered some sort of incentive to take part. And you really do need to go into that amount of detail with the research methods assignment. So you think that through. Do you think that's a good idea to do that? But again, if you think you are going to give some sort of incentive, be realistic. What most people would have done in the past would say, whether it's focus group or one-to-one interviews or whatever else, they would provide tea and biscuits and that sort of stuff. And I know that seems strange, but we do sort of want that level of detail. It's something you can actually write very, very quickly. Well, this slide speaks for itself, really. If you are going to use a focus group, you may want to make a note of the fact that people will be sent personalized invitations and how long in advance of the focus group they're actually told when it's going to be. But these are just very straightforward practicalities. Again, there isn't a huge amount I'm going to say about this slide. There's a couple of issues in it, but we go into them in a bit more detail in slides that are going to follow. So I'll leave it at that for that slide. So you've gathered everybody together for your focus group. How do you start? Again, this is important for your research methods assignment. You need to include a list of the questions that you would ask, a focus group schedule, we'll call it, okay? And that could begin with something straightforward as welcome. How would you welcome people when they arrive? You do need to go into that amount of detail, okay? We're going to look at the type of questions you will ask in the next slide. In some previous assignments that I've received, the schedule, whether it's an interview schedule, focus group schedule, is almost done like an afterthought. And it's obvious the student hasn't really paid much attention to what questions they would actually ask, and in what order would they ask the questions, or even what type of questions would they ask in terms of, are they dichotomous questions, or are they yes no questions, those sorts of things. So for a focus group, you're always going to use open-ended questions. You don't want to ask a question which anyone in the group can just answer no or yes, because that just ends the conversation. And you want a conversation and you want a discussion. Dichotomous questions as well. They can say, give you one answer and another, and that's it, and the conversation doesn't actually go anywhere. You can use why questions. They are rarely asked, I suppose, think back questions, but the questions need to be prepared. Okay, you need to go into your focus group with a list of questions you're going to ask. Some of those questions are going to be very general, but you should also note when you write your focus group schedule some probing questions as well. So if a question is answered or the discussion goes in this direction, this is the other question I would ask as well, maybe to get more information or to follow up on what's actually being said by the participants. This is just a brief note on the analysis of the focus group. In theory, at least, it should start while the group is actually still discussing. You should be making your notes, or even mentally you're making your notes. This is how I'm going to look at this. It should be analysed very soon afterwards, mainly when things are still fresh in your mind as well, but you will have recorded it, okay? And then you would analyse that as you go on before you prepare your report. With the focus group, remember as well, and when it comes to looking at the materials you're going to need for your research, your hypothetical research, how are you going to record your focus group? You can't do an analysis if you don't have a recording of the focus group and hence the data. So that might be video recording material, it could be a dictaphone. Most people choose video recording material, but you have to state that's exactly how you would record the group for the basis of the subsequent analysis. We're going to finish with the advantages and disadvantages of a focus group. If you choose a focus group for your research proposal, you have to look at this. You have to look at the advantages and disadvantages. The same applies to questionnaires. The same applies to one-to-one interviews as well. Okay. One of the advantages, it's supposed to be valid. Okay, because going back to what we mentioned in the previous slide, our ideas and our ultimate standpoints on a lot of things aren't entirely our own making. They're made in conjunction with other people through conversation. See how other people act, see how other people react. So validity, obviously, in relation to qualitative methods, is do we have an accurate picture of the reality for that person? So if you're talking to people about their views on climate change, and you get a number of statements from a number of different people, are they an accurate reflection of what those people actually really think? That's what we mean by validity, okay? In research, specifically, that's what we mean by validity in qualitative research. As with all qualitative methods, it gives us an in-depth understanding. So we're not asking yes no questions or strongly agree to strongly disagree. We can look at things in depth. And in theory, at least, the focus group, if it runs well, should go into a lot of detail about any specific topic. Okay, so it's very good for generating a lot of data, which can be slightly problematic because you have to analyze it all, but it gives you a lot of insight into how people feel and how people make their decisions about certain things. It may generate new insights, again, as all qualitative methods may, but you get a group talking and they may go off in directions and start talking about topics that you hadn't even considered in relation to your specific research topic. And if you've got, say, 6, 7 people in the room, there at least is the potential there to generate some new ideas rather than just a one-to-one interview. It can be used to complement statistical data. And I'm sure I've mentioned this before. Quite a lot of research will have a statistical element and a focus group element. Quite a lot of the statistical research does tend to augment it with focus groups rather than any other type of qualitative method. It can be used for policy development. Now, this may be quite important in terms of what your research topic is. Say, for example, I know a lot of your parents, the Department of Education decided, well, we're going to cut the summer holiday from 8 weeks down to 7, and we're going to give the school children another week off around about midterm. If they would just went ahead and did that without actually discussing that with parents, you could see that they could run into all sorts of problems. So focus groups would traditionally be used, well, they're used for quite a lot of things, but one of their uses would be while a policy is being discussed by government, for example, we're going to change how we do something, but what do people actually think about this? How will this impact on them? So it's good for then directing the policy development. And that way, some people will say it's actually quite democratic because people through the focus group are actually having a say on how, for example, a government policy would develop. It's not just being implemented without their consensus. Now, looking at the disadvantages, and you will have to mention these, and they're very straightforward. It can be expensive and time consuming. All qualitative data, you can make the same point for all qualitative data. You have to get people together, you have to hire rooms, you have to get video equipment, stuff like that. And time, generally speaking, is money, and the focus group may run for a couple of hours. Okay. It's inherently problematic to arrange. So say you had 2 focus groups with 8 people in each. That's 16 people. You need to be at a certain place at a certain time and be able to stay there for a certain length of time. And that might sound very straightforward. It isn't. It's very difficult sometimes to get people, a group of people. If you ever try to arrange a night out with your friends, you know what the problems are. There's always somebody who can't do it, or somebody pulls out at the last minute or something like that. There's a problem with a biased sample, which we have in qualitative data, research, or any particular type of research in general. This is where you need to be very careful with who you invite to your sample, who you invite to your focus group, who actually is a part of your sample. In terms of thematic analysis, we won't really dwell on. Okay, some voices are louder than others. That's simply making the point that there are some people who like to monopolize conversations. I'm sure even in class you would think, well, there's some people tend to talk a bit more than others, okay, because they feel more confident or they're more interested. In a focus group, if you're talking about a topic which people have strong opinions you can have somebody who's quite forthright, big personality, and then they come to dominate. The knock-on effect then is that you don't really get valid responses in terms of authentic responses from other people, because they are almost browbeaten by the person or the people who are louder. They end up just dominating. They put the stamp of their character on the data, essentially. So if you were actually conducting a focus group, it's something you need to be aware of. You need to be very diplomatic about that. You get make everybody feel that they can respond, and try to get the louder voices to quieten down a bit. And I don't mean just the tone of the volume of their voice. I mean as well how often they're talking. You will get quite a lot of irrelevant data. You get a group together, get them talking about something they're interested in, and the conversation go off in all sorts of tangents. A skilled moderator, facilitator, knows how to bring things diplomatically back on course, but it can be quite difficult. It's a similar problem with qualitative interviews, one-to-one interviews as well. You will get a lot of irrelevant data, but you have to sift through it. To do this, realistically, you probably couldn't just set one of these up and just jump in and hope for the best. You need to be trained. To a certain extent, you need to be trained to do a one-to-one interview, but you can sort of find your feet as you do that. It's a different prospect if you're confronted with 8 people and say they're all having a very vigorous discussion, and you don't really know how to get them back on track, or you don't say they aren't having a vigorous discussion, say they don't want to talk. You have to know how to get them to open up, or you have to know how to get them to get back on track. The problem of sensitive topics takes us back to our sample again and the demographic issue. Some groups, some people in some groups are not going to want to talk about certain things in front of you, given your demographic, or other people in the group, given their demographic. There are some topics, obviously, which are very sensitive, and people, generally speaking, do not want to talk about in front of anybody other than a very close personal friend anyway. So think about that. If you're considering focus groups and your research topic is something which is quite sensitive, would a focus group be a good idea, or would something like a questionnaire where there's more obvious anonymity and where nobody's actually going to know who's giving the responses, would that be a better way to go forward? Okay, that's all I'm going to do on focus groups. Any queries, send me an email. I've just received my staff mobile phone. So I'm going to go and make sure that it's working. I'll email you all out the number, and I've already said in the email the time that we can speak. So it's basically around about the same time as our Thursday class. If you have anything really urgent, if you email me first and say, ask, can you give me a phone, or I can give you a phone, and I'm sure we'll be fine. Okay, thanks.